for us, we really just decided that we wanted to really focus on all of the in between things. We also realized that our ideal client was typically someone who had been traveling to all of these places. They'd been to Venice, Florence, Rome, Cinque Terre, Amalfi Coast, all of these places kind of sometimes again and again. And so now they were ready for something new, something different, something that they felt like was more exclusive and kind of stretched them a little bit out of their comfort zone. And so that's what we kind of set out to do.
Good morning to another episode of the Tourpreneur podcast. And this morning, I'm very happy to introduce Natalie Richard from Joy of Wine Journeys, which is a multi-day, reasonably luxurious wine experience company. Welcome, Natalie. Where in the world are you at the moment?
Currently, we're in Italy. We have a tour group that's about to wrap up in the next couple of days. And so I've got a little break. So I thought I'd jump on and to share a little bit.
So let's get into Joy of Wine Journeys. Where did it come about? How long have you been going? How did it start? What was the ideas, etc.?
Yeah. So we kind of came about it in maybe a different way than some other travel professionals did. My husband actually started a wine import company about 17 years ago and started working with small family producers as an importer. As an importer, you can't really grow your business through direct sales. So you can only grow through sharing stories and kind of growing the brand in that way. And so we were doing a lot of wine events at, country clubs and wine shops and working, sales reps, this kind of thing, and sharing those stories. And people kept coming up to us and saying, gosh, I would love to visit these wineries. We, had an opportunity to maybe meet that winemaker when they were in town and said, we'd love to go. Do you do that? Do you take people to visit the wineries? And for 4 years, we said, no, we don't do that. We'll give you a couple recommendations. And after 4 years, we finally said, well, what if we said yes? So it was my husband and I and a couple couples in a van. And he was driving us around and we really just introduced them to our friends, the places that we love to go, the people that we had fallen in love with over the years, our favorite chefs, our favorite restaurants. And it just was originally kind of a fun hobby for us. That was 12 years ago. And then it's just grown ever since, originally starting off with Northern Italy. And then from there, it's grown to France, and then it's grown again to now central and southern Italy. And so it's been quite the fun journey, but we never went into it with the intention of being, in the travel space. But it's something that we've, absolutely love and we're excited to be doing now.
It never ceases to amaze me that where people come from before they start a tour business. Yours is a different story because it grew out of another business, but the tourpreneurs listening to this, they all drop into running a tour business from all sorts of things in the world. Rarely, it is a rare person who went to university and came out of university and said, I'm going to run a tour business. It just doesn't seem to happen. Everybody seems to drop into it from another business. So you and your husband were running a importing business. Was that into the US? I take it into the US?
Yeah, we import wine from Italy, also France, Argentina, and New Zealand into the US.
Yeah. So you mentioned your husband. What's it like running a tour business as a husband and wife team?
Great question. Well, we learned early on that we have very different strengths, which is fantastic, but also obviously can be challenging. So we found that we are really great at kind of divide and conquer. So he really runs the import company full time. I run the tour company full time. And then we come together to do tours. So I do a small project for him on the import side once a month. And he comes and I joke with him, I say he's the hired talent on the tour. But he's phenomenal. We both really have specific roles, even when we're on tour. So he is fantastic, of course, at his wine knowledge and sharing the family stories and geography and all those types of things and sharing the stories of the places and the culture of where we are. For me, I have to GPS to get to the grocery store. So I'm definitely not your girl for, the geography part of it. But I definitely handle everything from the hospitality side to logistics to just making sure that the tour runs really, really smooth. And, if someone forgot something or they've changed up, and all of a sudden have realized they have a food allergy, I'm the one that's kind of behind the scenes, handling all of that. And then, with the guests, of course, during the tour, we both host all of our tours, except for one tour that we do in France.
Sounds like a great division of responsibilities. I know personally, if I was working with my wife in the business, I would be divorced about 3 months after we started. That's for sure. When you
Yeah, it's not always been easy.
when you look back, so you've been going 12 years ago.
Mhm.
Now you started sort of from an idea from the import business. When you look back at the very first trips you did, the itineraries you created, if you could start again, what would you say to Adam and Natalie 12 years ago based on your 12 years of experience now?
Yeah, I think I would probably tell us back then to dream a little bigger. Initially, with it just being, a couple couples, and like I said, driving around in a van, and it was really we were staying at little agriturismos and all of these things. And we when we laid out our first itinerary, we said, "Gosh, where are the places that we want to keep going back to? What are our favorite places?" And so we designed. Our plan was to design one itinerary, and it was going to be our signature tour that we did over and over again. And we did that for Northern Italy, and that was our signature tour for, gosh, 9 years. That's really all we did with tour groups. And we typically are doing now 9 a year, and they're 10-day tours, so long tours. And so we were doing the same tour again and again and loving it. But then our guests were starting to, go on this exact same tour more than, and we never thought that that would happen. And then from that point, they started to say, okay, now what's next? And we had been importing French wine for a long time, about 7 years by that point. And so we said, well, let's give it a go. Let's go and design a new French tour. And so we did. We went and spent about 2 months in France. We had spent a lot of time there throughout the years, but we went and spent 2 months really intentionally to meet with guides and test restaurants and meet with hotels and all of the things to really put together an itinerary that we were really super proud of. And then we launched that with a beta group of people that had traveled with us before. And so that really took off, and those filled up very, very quickly. And then this last year, we had the same type of experience. People were coming back and saying, okay, we've done Italy with you, we've done France, now what's next? And so we thought a lot about, gosh, like where else would we want to go? But for us, it's important that we're tying our tours back to the wineries that we represent. So we thought about Argentina, we thought about New Zealand, kind of looked into those different things, but then we just came back to the fact that Italy is really our first love. And so we said, well, what if we went back and we just really designed another tour in Italy with Central and Southern Italy, visiting some more of our producers. And so we rolled that out this year. So what started out as this little company has continued to grow now to include these three itineraries. And I don't know where we'll go from here, but I think we never thought of it doing, growing at this rate or ever having any other tours. And so this has really been an exciting thing, but not something we ever anticipated.
So, for entrepreneur listeners there, what Natalie's just described there is what I call lifetime value of a customer. There's nothing more important in a multi-day business than your customer that you acquire for the first time. You've spent money, whether you've measured how much money you've spent or not, you have spent money acquiring that customer. And it's then all about getting the value out of that customer. And for a multi-day company, that's about building repeat business where the customer comes 2, 3, 4 times. You measure then that customer on your system, how many times they visit, how much money they spend with you. It suddenly becomes exceedingly interesting to look after that customer very, very well, because they don't just come back themselves, they also introduce other
Mm.
to come back. So,
At this point, we're about 75% repeat business, which is for us is completely that blows us away.
so you
It's
mentioned new itineraries, new destinations. How do you balance thing that people who are traveling to these destinations, France, Italy, Argentina, they want to see the big hits if they've never been there before. If it's their first time visit and they've never been before, they want to see the big sites. They want to see the things they've heard of. But you also want to introduce them to small family wineries and restaurants out in the back middle of nowhere that can be quite special, but the customer also wants to see the big hits of Italy or big hits of France. How do you balance that when you're designing your experience?
Yeah, I think first step is to know, what your thing is. And for us, we realized early on that for us, the bigger cities are not where we feel like we can add value. I think a lot of people do that really fantastic. And so all of our itineraries are actually connecting between bigger cities where, like an example is our guests fly into Paris. We don't actually spend time with them in Paris. We have a private transfer that takes them to our first hotel in Champagne where we meet them. And we like to do all the in between things. And then our guests have a private transfer to the Nice airport at the end of our trip. And then a lot of guests will spend time in Nice. And so for us, we really just decided that we wanted to really focus on all of the in between things. And for us, we also realized that our ideal client was typically someone who had been traveling to all of these places. They've been to Venice, Florence, Rome, Cinque Terre, Amalfi Coast, all of these places kind of sometimes again and again. And so now they were ready for something new, something different, something that they felt like was more exclusive and kind of stretched them a little bit out of their comfort zone. And so that's what we kind of set out to do. I will say that one of the things we're continuing to look for is those partners that like are in those bigger cities. Because we don't do that, we want to partner with other people that we can refer business to and that we know they'll be really taken care of while they want to visit Paris, they want to visit Nice, they want to visit Milan or Venice or some of these bigger cities that we are connecting through.
No, I'm not a wine expert by any means, shape, or form, but I've been to a lot of wineries. I've had a lot of wine experiences. Uh, how do you choose which ones to work with and which ones not to? How talk us through that process? How do you go about finding, measuring, tasting, selecting?
Yeah, yeah. Actually, this is a fantastic question that really is my husband's specialty with the import company. And so for him, he typically is tasting about 100 wines before he finds one that he's like, this is, of good quality, but also where it's sellable in the US, where he knows that, the customers that will likely purchase this. We have to sell from import to distribution to then they sell to restaurants or retailers. So it's a lot of times looking for that. But the most important thing is figuring out people that we feel like we can have a long-term partnership with. And so a lot of these, wineries that we work with, they're family-run wineries. They're multi-generational, and they've a lot of times never had their wine in the US. So there's this opportunity to be able to grow those brands, but it's a slow process. So slowly sharing those stories every once in, a couple times a year, they'll come over to the US and they'll actually go to, country clubs or wine dinners or these types of things and share their stories. So it's got to be a partnership where they realize that it's slow moving, but it's definitely worth it to get into the right spots. So
How
kind of,
do you mix the challenge? Now, this is me going by my own week
yeah.
experience of visiting wineries and vineyards. How do you mix the challenge where there's some really, really good vineyards producing great wine, but they're not really set up or focused on hosting guests or hosting tourists? Do you then you get the wine for them, but you use it in another environment? Or how do you go about that if you find a great wine, but you just know straight away they are not set up to host your guests?
Yeah, I mean, we work with I think we work with 30 different family wineries right now, and we don't include all of them are not included in the trip. Some of them are very, very tiny. They definitely aren't. They don't have a facility to host us, or maybe they could host us, but it would be just outdoors, some beautiful tables, but just with weather wise, it's too much of a risk. Some people are fantastic at making wine, but they're not so maybe great at hosting
That
or
was
great
my
at
point, without being blunt about it, is
yeah,
I've met
yeah,
some of these winemakers and they make
yeah.
fantastic wine, but I wouldn't let them near customers.
Yeah, yeah. So we yeah, look for people that have this isn't what we originally look for when we're looking to work with them from the wine standpoint. It typically always comes first. So we're already importing their wine. We already have success. And then we're going back and saying, okay, wait, could this be a partner for us when it comes to actually connecting the dots on one of our itineraries? And so when we just finished and launched our new Central and Southern Italy tour, we went and we sat with each of these wineries. We'd been there multiple times, but we went and we looked at it in a different with different eyes. Like where would the guests sit and how would we greet the guests and how would we show them an experience that was different than just going to any other winery that they've been to before? What are some special things that we can do that are more local that we can kind of bring into this specific, you know, area that we're at visiting this winery? And what stories do we want to share that we feel like will really connect with our guests? Some of these conversations we have, and then the first time we go, we kind of walk through that, and then afterwards, we really kind of to have the same conversation and tweak it and say, okay, with the next group, let's try it this way. And so been a lot of that throughout the years, and now it's easy for us because of the fact that we go back to the same wineries. We get there, and they know the routine. They know exactly kind of what we do, and so it's for them, it's easy, and for us, it feels very streamlined and easy, and everything flows really well. But it took some work to get there.
You mentioned you had a 75% rebooking rate, which is fantastic. And again, for
Yeah.
listeners, you want to measure your rebooking rate. Also measure your referral rate, so the people that these great customers introduce to come back to the business as well. And the reason you do that is because that tells you how much new business you have to acquire each year, which tells you how much to budget for. So all of this flows as a system. Let's talk about your customer. These people that keep coming back and back. Who are they? Describe your perfect customer. Who is the perfect customer for this business?
So our average customer is average age 63. They are typically retired because these are a little bit longer trips and they like to add to the front or the back end. For me, my favorite part is a lot of them are celebrating a big birthday or a milestone anniversary or something like that. They're likely empty nesters. They are excited about traveling or excited about traveling again. Most of them are very well traveled, where they have been to lots of places. They've probably been to Italy lots of times, mostly Tuscany. Like Como, some of these other places. And like I said, now they're ready for something a little bit different, to visit kind of those in between places. Our people are they're wine lovers, but they're not wine experts by any means. They just love to eat and drink, and that's really part
Who
of what
doesn't?
we love. Is, to show them, the favorite places that we like, the wines that we like. We try to really challenge our guests throughout the trip. All of the wine is included, but my husband also is all about kind of educating in a very approachable way. So we do some fun, there's wine pairings with every meal we have together that we select ahead of time. And, he might challenge them a little bit to talk about New World wines or Old World wines or different vintages and just different things to kind of help them just learn a little bit as we go, but it's definitely not the type of thing where, we do an industry tour once a year with sommeliers and people that own wine shops and that kind of thing. And that's a whole different tour. That's like really digging deep, but this is much more. If you like to eat and drink, you are our person.
So sticking with your customer, you've been going 12 years now, so that's a reasonable time. Has there been any changes in the customer profile, the demands from the customer? Is there any change you can identify in the customer?
Yeah, absolutely. So when we first started out, and like I had shared before, it was, us and staying at Turismo's and driving around in a van, this kind of thing. And it's definitely evolved from there. So at this point, we stay at 5-star accommodations. We're eating at Michelin restaurants, a couple during the trip, but we're also, we still keep those fun little osterias and the stuff that, is, a little bit harder to find as hidden gems. We're still introducing them to our friends, all of those things, but we've just really kind of up leveled the quality of the accommodations and some of the meals. We've included a lot more wines. Our transportation, we have a private driver now with a luxury bus for these type of things. And so even our price point has really, in the last 12 years has gone completely different. But as long as we're continuing to deliver on the value and our guests are still saying like, wow, I can't believe that the price is what it is, maybe, even encouraging us to continue to up it. I think that we're doing something
Discuss
good.
that. Let's discuss
Yeah.
that. The guests are saying to you they can't believe the price it is. On the downside, that's their opinion.
No, on a good side, like, they're saying, "Okay, we're getting so much
Yeah,
value
no, that's what
where
that's
it's
what I
some."
mean.
Yeah,
They think it's a low price.
yeah, so we keep upping it and upping it,
Yes,
upping it.
good,
Yeah,
good,
we've upped
good.
it pretty much every year for the last 12 years, but now, yeah, it's extremely different from where we started to where we are now.
So again, for our listeners here, and for those that come on the coaching calls and those that meet me in person, I go on about this time and time and time again. As a tour operator, your job with pricing is to find the ceiling. And what a
Mhm,
ceiling is as high as your price can go until your customers start pushing back.
mhm,
So you keep raising your prices until the customers start mentioning that they're finding this quite expensive, or your ratio of inquiries to bookings starts going down, and you can see it's because of price. This is so, so important to find out where your maximum price is. It doesn't mean you then keep selling at your maximum. You can come off at a few percent, but you know you're at the market price for your customers by doing that exercise. You have to do that exercise. It's slightly different in multi-day because you've got such a long lead time. You can do it all year round. That exercise for day tours, you have to do it when you're really busy. You can't do it in the off season. They have to do it in the busy season when they get lots of bookings. Most operators never ever in their whole career of operating tour companies do that exercise. And what it means is you've left an absolute fortune on the table because you've never actually found the market price for your product. And you can't find the market price for your product by looking at other tour companies and other people's. That can give you a rough ballpark idea. But your customers, what you deliver is different. So you have to find your own market price. And it's quite a brave exercise to do. You have to have a bit of get up and go to do it. But it is so critical that people actually do this.
Every time we raised our rates, my husband and I both, we looked at each other and said, "Yeah, is this too high? Maybe this is too high." And never a complaint.
We all do it. Every tour operator does it. We're all guilty of it, but we are not our customer. You have to really decide who your customer is, your customer profile, really understand that. And for many operators, they have multiple customer profiles because they're dealing with different customers. You've got a very narrow, you know your customer inside out. That is not you. That is your customer. Therefore, you have to price where they are willing to go, not where you or your friends are willing to go. It's a very different thing that we're dealing with. You're in outbound international tours. Anybody who runs them knows that they don't always go swimmingly well. Things go wrong more in outbound international tours than other type of tour operating for the simple reason you're dealing with so many different logistics, flights, travel, weather. How are you dealing with the craziness of looking after people outbound into different countries?
First off, confirm, confirm, confirm again, reconfirm again. Even, we book typically, some of our accommodations and things a year out, or sending them a message, 6 months out. We're sending, 3 months, 1 month. I'm sending them a message the day of, I'll see you today to make sure that everything runs smoothly that way. We, definitely had, a few things here and there that have happened unexpectedly that are just completely out of our control over the years. But, I think for us, it's been a little bit of, I think a little bit of, I would say a good thing in some ways from the standpoint of we realize who our real partners are in these circumstances where something doesn't go quite right. The fact that we could reach out to a local guide that we work with or one of our hotels that we've had a really great relationship with, and they kind of jump in and come to our rescue. I can give you one specific example of a crazy thing that happened, and probably one of our craziest things that we've experienced in the last 12 years is we had a new relationship with a bus company. We had used another company for a couple years now in France, and within the last couple months, the bus company they upped the level of their buses. It's some new bus and a new driver, and came back to us and said, actually, your contract was for that old bus, which wasn't an old bus to begin with, and a different driver. So now your rate is more than 20% more. And so for us, that wasn't, that's not what we had planned. That's not the type of partner that we want or typically want to continue to work with. And so we went with another bus company that was well vetted. We walked through our local guide, went and met with them. She did videos of the bus. We would have all of the things. And the day of the tour, the bus arrives and it is not that bus. It was a completely different bus. It wasn't a terrible bus, but it was not that bus. And we have a high-end clientele, so we have a certain standard of what that bus should be. And so we really, I had her kind of on the ground reaching out to the bus company and trying to figure out. So we get going and we get to our first winery and we make a stop and things were going well. We get in the bus and we had lunch and then we headed on to our next winery. And all of a sudden, the air conditioning is not working. And we're trying to figure out what's going on, and the bus drivers, trying to figure it out. And we make a stop, and the bus had a belt for the air conditioning belt that completely broke. So we're now in a position that we have, 20 guests, luxury guests on a bus that we're not happy about. And we have 30 minutes to get to our next winery. And so this was a nightmare. So thank goodness, I had a bunch of portable fans in my bag. I try to have this kind of Mary Poppins bag that just has all the kind of things, hopefully, that we need. I had some like cooling towels. We had bottled water. So we're trying to just, keep the guests as happy as possible. And a lot of them were repeat guests. So they were understanding. They knew this was not our norm by any means. And so we were able to get to the winery. And in the meantime, we reached out to this local guide. We reached out to our hotel we were going to. They called in vans from three different places. They all arrived together. The guests got into air conditioning vans. They actually sent cold bottled water for our guests. And then they had another hour drive to the hotel where they checked in, and everything ended up, running as smooth as it possibly could. But that was a disaster situation. And so I got on the call with the owner the next day with the bus company and really kind of laid it out there. And before you know it, the next day, that actual bus that we were shown shows up, and that's our bus that we had for the rest of the trip. And so that was a nightmare. But thank God we had partners that were able to step in when something went wrong. We had someone local on the ground that was also able to kind of step in when there was a need. And we've now come back to the fact that we can really trust our partners and of course, continue to look for good partnerships that we don't end up in this type of situation.
Sometimes these things that go awry or go not the way you want to go are sometimes experiences, though, for the customers. And how they can see things are not going right. They're not stupid. They can see things are not how it should be. But if the company tries its hardest and does everything possible to fix what shouldn't be, I'm not convinced it's a bad thing. In some ways, it's a good thing. It actually deepens the relationship with the customer because most people, not all customers, we know that, but most customers, balanced individuals, that they know things go wrong. It's more about how you fix it can actually deepen the
Mhm.
relationship with the customer.
It's true, and, even by the end of the trip, it was something that there was jokes that were being, joking around about it, and I think that, we did apologize, of course, to the guests, and we did a couple other special things, throughout the trip just to, add extra value in where we felt like that, of course, was not the best experience, but, yeah, the response was, "You guys did the best you could. You handled the situation," and, there wasn't, you know there wasn't complaints, which it really could have gone so much worse. So for us, knowing that we have partners we can rely on definitely makes, you know, doing international tours so much better.
So you've been going 12 years now, which is a reasonable stint. If you were advising a reasonably new, say someone has been going, we have a lot of tourpreneurs in the membership who have been going 2 years, 3 years. A lot of people started coming out of COVID. So they're really in that multi-day world of doing 1 to 4 tours a year. They're just really getting going. What would be the hard lessons that you've learned that you would like to pass on to the guys and girls still getting started and getting going?
Yeah. I would say there's kind of three specific things that I would tell them to focus on. So one of them I would say is to really be open to feedback. I think sometimes you go out, you build something, and maybe it's your baby, and you're like, this is what I think is going to be perfect. And we've grown and evolved our tours so much over the years because we listen to what the guests are saying. And then at the end of, during the tour, obviously, and make tweaks as we, can, even little suggestions here and there. Um, after the tour, we get their feedback, and my husband and I, we sit down and we talk about how can we make it better every year? How can we make it better? And not based on what we want, but based on what the clients are actually asking for. Our ideal clients and what they're asking for, and looking how can we just continue to improve? And so I would say number one would probably be to really be open to feedback, even if it's sometimes hard to hear that something you created was not absolutely perfect. The second I would say is quality over quantity. So one of the things that we have really focused on is making sure that we almost are continuing to take some things out of our tour. I think initially when you build it, you want to add in anything and everything that you think it would be so cool that you want your guests to experience, but then they're exhausted because you're trying to put more and more in. We're a wine focused tour. It's food and wine, but we visit 5 wineries in the course of 10 days. We're not the type of tour that we're running from winery to winery. We're the type of tour that you sit down and have a tasting after you've had a beautiful tour of the property with the winemaker. You're sitting with the family and introducing, having lunch and having a 3 hour visit, not a 1 hour. I'm standing in a winery, someone's just pouring me wine, someone who just happens to work there. So it's this quality experience over adding more and more and more in. So I think that's one of the things, even with quality over quantity, even when it came to like marketing, for us, it was easy initially to feel like we had to be doing all of the things versus saying, can we just have a few different things that were our best kind of marketing sources? And can we just pour more time and energy and effort into those things versus trying to do it all? Same thing with our relationships with travel agents. We don't need a bunch of them. We just need some really good ones. So I think maybe not being overwhelmed with trying to have so many, but having more quality. And then the last one I'd say that kind of ties in this too is really prioritize relationships. That is really the number one thing. Sharing the story of the crazy thing that happened to us. We knew we could rely on those relationships, but it's also we're looking for partnerships that with a hotel that it's a win for both of us. The same thing with local guides, with our chefs, with these small businesses. We're bringing a lot of money to their business, and for them, it's an honor to be able to host us too, and for them to share their stories. So my three things are to really be open to feedback. The second one is quality over quantity. And the third is prioritizing relationships.
Right. So on that, for the tourpreneurs, the marketing one you mentioned, it's very easy for new businesses to think they have to be doing everything marketing. You don't. You need to be doing marketing, a lot of it, but it does need to be reasonably focused. And the best way to focus your marketing is to really, really understand who your customer is. We discussed it earlier in this recording. You need to understand who your customer is, because once you understand really who your customer is, you can then figure out where they are. And not all customers that you target will be on every platform, every social. Types of customer respond to different types of marketing. So after you figure out who your customer is, you need to figure out where they are, and that changes your whole marketing journey. Why is that important? Because it means your cost of acquiring the customer gets lower when you really know where your customers are. So your lifetime value of every customer is much higher because you're not having to spend as much money acquiring a customer. To put some numbers on that for the listeners, particularly in multi-day, I know multi-day companies who are acquiring customers as low as $50, $60 per customer, which is outrageously good if they're spending thousands of dollars. And I know other companies who are spending $500, $600, $700 acquiring customers. So there's no a right and a wrong in that. It's just what it is. It's where you need to understand where your customers are. The other thing you mentioned is partnerships. In multi-day, particularly, partnerships are the make or break of the business. You can't run everything yourself in someone else's country. That's impossible. You just can't do it. You have to have these depth of partnerships and relationships that are built over time. You really are only as good as the people who are working with on the ground. What's in wine tourism specifically that is absolutely booming? You see sectors of our industry go through peaks and troughs. You have sectors that absolutely boom and then they level off, and then it's rare you see one disappear. It's rare a vertical or a sector disappears, but you do get sectors that boom and then level off and a bit more flat after that. So what does that mean to tour operators? It means make hay when the sun shines. When you're in a sector that's going through a lot of change and a lot of growth and a lot of interest, you have to run. If you're ambitious, everybody's different. Some people just want to manage what they've got. But if you're in a sector that's growing, you have to run hard. You have to really grab the growth when you can get it, because there's no guarantee it's going to be there in the same way in X number of years' time, because trends change, customers change, things go up and down. We know all the international stuff that happens in politics and all the rest of it interferes with this business. So when you're in a sector like wine at the moment that's growing quite considerably, you have to run faster than you probably want to grab that opportunity when it's there. Because the opposite, when you're in a sector, and we'll have many operators listen to this who are in sectors that are not growing like that, you have to work a lot harder when you're not in a sector that's growing as great as that, has got that same interest. You're going to have to do a lot more marketing in a sector that's not growing. So if you're listening to this and you're lucky enough to be in wine, food, adventure, workshops are growing like a train. Anything to do with workshops are growing like a train. Wellness. If you're in one of these sectors and you're thinking you're going to be running 4 tours or 5 tours this year, start thinking about running 10 or more, because the market is there. Any market is compounding each year in double figures percentages. You have a market, and if you're not capturing it, it's your marketing, because the market is definitely there to be had. Well, after that rant, what's up for? No, let's talk about technology, because multi-day tours and technology is important. Are you using any technology?
Yeah, absolutely. We use Travel Joy is for our CRM, and we actually just started the process of switching over to We Travel. We like that a little bit better because we can charge in euros, and definitely with the fluctuation, in all of this right now, charging in euros is fantastic. So we just have switched over, and we're using that for payments. I don't quite love the platform for the CRM part of it, so maybe we'll end up keeping Travel Joy for that element. I don't know. We'll go with that. Um, so far, I like We Travel. We also use Travefy for our itinerary builder. Enjoy that tool. I like the fact that it's an app that our guests can use while they're on tour. And then, we use QuickBooks and, that type of thing as far as within the business too.
So there you've just described a technology stack of 4 different pieces of
Ah,
technology. And obviously you're using a website and email and so just in your tour business, there's probably 7 or 8 different pieces of technology all and news on We Travel, they raised $98 million last week. So I would expect quite a bit of investment to go into the platform and see the things that you're
no,
maybe
that'd be great.
not keen on, maybe improve rather rapidly, because when you've got $98 million of new cash coming in, things tend to change fairly rapidly. So that's great to see a multi-day operator with a stack that's working for you, but you're still open enough to look at new solutions and what's going to work. Your point on what to charge in is a point that comes up all the time in the Tourpreneur group. It is a pain point for multi-day operators. Do they charge in the local currency where their customers are coming from, or do they charge in the currency of where the customers are going? For obvious reasons, the currency markets are moving this year quite dramatically, which can really eat into the profits of the tour operator. There is no hard fixed rule for this. It's what suits each individual operator. I personally always used to build in a margin to allow for currency exchange. It was quite a big margin. I always added 10% in just to allow for currency exchange. I never ever experienced a 10% currency swing in the time I was operating. Sometimes there was quite big swings, but I never experienced more than a 10% currency swing. But with new technology today, there's lots of ways that you can manage this currency exposure uh, for the way, or if you're comfortable and your customers are happy, the easy way is just to charge in the destination. And if you're going to Europe, it's reasonably easy because it's euros cover so many destinations in Europe one way. But I've seen that conversation in the group reasonably every week, every 2 weeks. That conversation comes up in the group. And we have many partners in Tourpreneur that actually specialize in dealing with currency movements, technical fintech type partners that can minimize the risk of moving currency going across different places. Going forward, for those listening, I believe the risk of currency transaction will disappear in the next few years. If the USA government goes fixed in law with a thing called stable coins that won't go into, but if they go fixed in stable coins, the risk from currency movements will disappear for operators. But it's certainly a thing that's hurting some operators at the moment. What do you see going forward is the natural progression for the type of tour you're doing, this wine and food tour with a high-end customer in different destinations that they've known since children and always had a ambition to go to, or like you said, maybe been to multiple times before. How do you see that evolving? What do you need to do to make that better going forward or different going forward from what you're doing now?
Right now, what we're really focused on is kind of making these partnerships for, like I was saying, in the bigger cities. So we need to find a great partner. I want to find a great one in Venice I can refer business to. We definitely, almost all of our guests stay an additional day and they go to Venice. I need a guide that is on the ground, that is phenomenal, that I feel very comfortable referring business to. Same thing in Milan, same thing in Paris, same thing in Nice, same thing we've got a great partner in Florence. So I'm excited about that. Great partner maybe in, Catania or around that area would be fantastic. So we're looking to grow kind of those partnerships on the front and the back end of the tour because there's already demand for it. In the future, we've got a few ideas for other wine areas that maybe we'd look to partner with someone. We had a really great partnership this last year, actually. I'm sure you know Gregory with Basque Bites.
Yeah, yeah.
He's phenomenal. Partnered with him this last year and we called it Joy of Wine Goes Basque. And so, kind of work together. He is a fantastic guide and does kind of these, 3, 4 day trips. And now he's starting to do more and more of these multi-day. And so we worked together and built an itinerary. He built the itinerary. We gave some feedback on, what our guests might be really looking for. And then my husband and I, we went along and we were kind of co-hosts. And so it was a very cool opportunity to collaborate in that way, which we hadn't done before. And so we're kind of open to that too with the right partners. So those are kind of the areas we see that we're planning to focus on growth over the next, couple years.
Great to hear that you're one growing. Again, it's all about partnerships. And for the listeners, we've just had a request there for multiple locations for the best guides who know about wine, their
Reach out to
destination
me.
wine and food. Reach out and get in conversation and hopefully develop more partnerships within the tourpreneur ecosystem. So back to your guest. Guest comes, has a great experience in Italy or Argentina or France, what do you want that guest to go away with? What's sticking in that guest's mind? Or what do you want to be in that guest's mind as they leave that tour or leave that experience?
I want them to feel like they made friendships, not only with other guests, because that's really cool to see. And so many of our guests, they do end up really connecting and then they travel together and kind of re-sign up for another tour together. Or we have a lot of these fun reunions that are going on with guests that maybe just met for the first time or guests that have been traveling, together before. So, we've been invited to a lot of those or get pictures of a lot of those. So that's really kind of cool. But we also want them to feel like they're making friends with the locals and they meet one of our winemakers and they're just super down to earth, good people. And they make quick connections and they're welcomed as family when they arrive. And I think that tend to, when that winemaker's in town, they tend to go to an event or something they've got going on and they're giving hugs and they're like, we have these friends all over Italy or all over France. We want them to feel that way. We also want them to feel like they definitely got their money's worth. This was a fantastic value for them. They got to have this amazing experience, and we also want to make sure that that we have delivered something that was above their expectations. So we try to under promise and way over deliver, and that's been good for us. So yeah, I guess I would say those are the things.
The under promise and over deliver is always a good thing in tour design and tour deliverings. As we start to wrap up now, let's make some destinations really happy and other destinations not so happy. What's your favourite region for wine in Italy?
Ah, okay. So I'm going to say Piedmont.
Mhm.
The reason why I say that is my husband and I, we have an apartment there. So we go 50% kind of back and forth. So like 2 months, 2 months, 2 months. Just have great friendships, but we're both big fans of Nebbiolo. So the grape that goes into Barbaresco, Barolo, those type of wines. And so, yeah, those are our favorites. And it plus I think because it's our second home, it also has a deeper place in our heart.
Okay, let's pick on the French now. Have you got a favourite French region?
So I'm a Champagne girl. So I definitely enjoy our time in Champagne. We have two different wineries that we work with there. And I would say also Burgundy. I'm in a little bit of if I'm going to go red, I'm going to go towards Piedmont with Nebbiolo. If I'm going to go white, I'm definitely going to go towards a white Burgundy or a Champagne.
Okay, a different question this time. If resources were unlimited, you had enough people, you had enough time, you had enough money, unlimited resources, what would be the next three wine destinations that you would open tours in?
It would be New Zealand. So we have a great partner in New Zealand, a winery partner, and we have guests that would absolutely love to go to New Zealand. For us, we are struggling a little bit with kind of from an infrastructure standpoint, how to kind of group that together. We've spent a good amount of time in New Zealand, but yeah, that would be a great partnership. If I could find a really great on the ground guide in New Zealand that could help us with kind of piecing these things together, and also, helping when we're on the ground, we would travel with the group. But yeah, that would be fantastic. We've got demand, so I guess yeah, that would be good.
New Zealand, great. I'll give you a
New Zealand.
suggestion. The most insane wine destination I've been to in the world, Georgia.
Mhm.
It's just like I've never met people so insanely interested in wine. And the amount of what you just walk down any street and there's wine everywhere. Every third shop's a wine retailer or a people just sitting drinking wine of ridiculous quantities. But I've never been anywhere that the whole population is so engrossed in wine. So to wrap this up, give us a winemaker story or a story from your 12 years of all of these different destinations. Give us a story that sticks in your mind.
Early on, we had these two travel buddies that were traveling together, and one had recently lost his wife, and the other was saying, "Let's just go and let's, explore. We have traveled a lot for business before, but let's take a trip." And so the one left his wife at home and went with his buddy to go on this tour with us. And so this is when we were really early starting out, and they had a great time on that trip. Since then, he went back. A few years later, the other gentleman had a new girlfriend, and they went with the wives this time, or the girlfriend and the wife this time, on another trip, same tour. Then a year or two later, they went again, and they brought her sister-in-law and the brother-in-law and some other people. So then last year, they went again, but this time to Basque with Gregory. and us, and they brought the daughter and the son and this daughter-in-law, and now this year they've already signed up for Central and Southern Italy, and they filled an entire tour with just family and friends. And so for us to, I mean, this relationship started 12 years ago, and now to the point where they've been on, I think I just named off like 6 trips with us over the years, and we've grown to love them as people. And when you've traveled that, these 10-day trips together, you really get to know them. Obviously, we're now getting to know their family even more. And so for us, that's been really exciting. And the friendships we formed out of this, my husband and I never went into it with that real intention. We thought, well, let's deliver a great experience. But I was saying we're constantly getting invited to reunions of people coming together, or come visit us at a lake house or whatever it might be. And so we've formed some really deep friendships that have been super fun for us too.
So that description you just gave there was full of fun and relationships and friends and how it grew, and it's all sounds nice. But in my brain, I'm just, because it's the way I am, I'm just going, lifetime value of a customer started there, and it just went bigger and it went bigger, and then the referrals, and then they're filling a whole trip. So by looking after customers exceptionally well, you can end up with customers actually contributing to your business hugely. Natalie from Joy of Wine Journeys, thank you for your time. I know you're busy. You're about to go straight out and lead another tour in Italy.
Mhm.
Thanks very much. That was excellent. Thank you.
This has been such a pleasure. Thank you so much, Peter.